in the latest example of cat in a tumble dryer levels of frantic insanity that seems to have clung to Assassin's Creed Shadows like aforementioned kitty cat's wet fur stench, Ubisoft is now promising to take legal action against consumers who are harassing their developers. Hoi. As lawyers are already ready to file complaints in the event of proven harassment on X, Reddit, or even YouTube videos. Considering that the entire company's fate might very well rest on this one singular title, I think Ubisoft is already taking a long, hard look at itself, but when you need potential legal and police protection from your own consumers, yeah, you really need to start thinking hard indeed as to how, by the God Emperor's great big shiny testicles, you arrived at this place. Jesus. Anyway, so Assassin's Creed Shadows has of course been absolutely littered with controversy since pretty much its announcement. This is an original French language article that I've translated into English via the powers of Google, and it seems pretty legible and understandable, so that's fine. But they start out by talking about, of course, the controversy, the fact that the studio's fate might pretty much rest in the balance here if this absolutely flops, but they also mention that apparently the pre-order numbers have been fairly good, somewhere in the level of Assassin's Creed Odyssey, but somewhat short of Valhalla, which means that it might very well be that Assassin's Creed has a large enough pre-installed user base that it might be able to weather this insanity, because a lot of its players probably aren't really what we would describe as gamers, who don't really pay attention to the wider hobby at large, and so doesn't really care. This is their latest installment of de facto Call of Duty, and so they're going to buy it and they're going to play it, regardless of any nonsense surrounding it. But this latest move is particularly aggressive. Now, mind you, I am not necessarily 100% against it. Now, the fact that the video game industry has arrived at the point where mass harassment of individuals working in the industry is becoming commonplace speaks volumes of how absolute garbage aforementioned industry has become, but outright threats of violence, etc. are not okay. It is actually illegal. And so if there is genuine evidence of long-term targeted harassment with threats of violence, etc., and a legitimate danger to the person in question, then yes, actions should absolutely be taken. But again, holy hell. How did we get here? I remember when I growing up, like the idea of games developers were rock stars, like video games journalists were. Oh God, help me. It was a profession to aspire to. Sweet baby Jesus. But this, of course, all depends on whether or not the definition of harassment is actually harassment or mean words on Twitter, as they mention YouTube here specifically, and I haven't been able to prove this myself decisively, but I have heard quite a few rumblings, usually over on Twitter, etc., about people's videos covering Assassin's Creed being taken down. Videos simply just talking about the ongoing controversies that have simply not halted for even a second, being removed from YouTube over copyright claims and strikes, etc. Again, I have not experienced that myself, and I haven't seen proper hard evidence, but there are a lot of rumblings and allegations of it, which usually means that there's something going on somewhere. And again, if this is simply just a anti-harassment campaign, then okay. They've advised their people to not post on social media that they work at Ubisoft to avoid harassment, which is again just goddamn hilarious. Emphasized one Ubisoft employee recalling the numerous online attacks already suffered since the game's presentation. Well, are they actually attacks though, or are they, why on God's good earth are you making a black samurai as your main character? An extreme and stressful situation that Ubisoft prefers to anticipate. An anti-online harassment plan was even presented to the CSE to accompany the game's release and protect employees. It is an initiative from Canada. There's a team that monitors networks and acts quickly in the events of a targeted attack, explains an elected official. Psychological and legal support is promised to employees who are targeted, unlike what we've had before. This is serious, he proclaims. Then it follows up with lawyers are already ready to file complaints in the event of proven harassment. That is, of course, rather strident, to put it mildly. Now, lodging complaints with the platform is one thing. See, that's the actual solution to most of this. If somebody on Twitter is mean to you, the correct and appropriate reaction is to block the person and report them to Twitter support for violating the Twitter terms of service. That is the normal, level-headed response to assholes on social media. If, however, you go to legal action, this is a step beyond that, and is going to only be justified by the most extreme form of harassment. We're talking like letter-writing campaigns or consistent online stalking, and even that's like, okay, Ubisoft, you're still $100+ million company. Are you really feeling entirely justified in going after some random dude on Twitter? And do you really think this is going to aid your public persona in any way whatsoever? I mean, even if they had plans to do this, it would be better to keep it gosh darn quiet, honestly. Or it might also be a threat, I guess, and a way to attempt to avoid harassment, quote unquote, by making it seem dangerous to do so. Possibly. Though, we must also remember that Ubisoft itself has had its fair share of legal trouble. I believe they mention it somewhere in this article here, where, amongst other things, they are being accused of various forms of cultural crimes against Japan, both by the Japanese government and one of the major shrines in the game that we have seen Yasuke absolutely devastate with a club up until this point, and also various scandals within the company, including the usual sexual abuse and harassment you see in all progressive organizations these days. Remember, to be a male feminist is to be a sex pest. The two can hardly be separated. But at the very least, it seems extraordinarily difficult. So, it might be as well that Ubisoft is simply thinking, okay, our biggest danger here isn't some random twat on Twitter writing mean comments to us. We are actually in danger of genuine, unironic legal action from a fucking nation at this point. So maybe having a staff of legal experts on hand might be wise, in which case, yeah, perhaps kinda. Or simply also understanding that the company itself, already embroiled in a fair bit of legal problems internally, really doesn't want yet further legal problems from outside. If anything, you'd think they'd focus on the stuff that's already going on within the company at that point, but oh well, details. It might also, in a more extreme, paranoid conspiracy theory sense here, be an effort to try and quell any outrage in the initial crucial hours of the game's launch. See, with all of these things, pre-order numbers are vital, of course, because that allows them to take the number to investors and potential, board members and go, hey, look, we're actually doing really, really great, which will drive confidence in the company, which will might then see recovering stock prices. Okay, that's one thing. Another is that when a game releases, a lot of people will wait a little bit to see about the reaction, whether it be on Steam reviews or on Twitter or their favorite content creators talking about it. In that case, being able to muzzle as much of that discontent as possible for perhaps the first, say, 48 hours or so could legitimately be a very beneficial thing for Ubisoft. As at this point, the reason for their multiple delays, their short delays, which aren't really enough for major gameplay changes or even large-scale bug fixes, was in all due likelihood to try to ride out as much much of the storm as possible, hoping that the pre-installed audience wouldn't catch whiff of the drama by keeping it on the down low, and hoping as well that perhaps those who are marginally interested and slightly online will forget about the nonsense by the time the game actually releases, as they want to get as many people into the game as possible and playing past those 2 initial hours. Honestly, I would not be particularly surprised if Yasuke doesn't even show up until, suspiciously around about 2.5 hours into the video game. Who knows, but there you have it. Ubisoft is now promising swift legal action against proven harassment, whatever Ubisoft defines that as. I mean, hey, the PR for Assassin's Creed couldn't possibly be getting any worse at this point, so might as well try whatever comes to mind, eh? Until next time, I've been Arch. Thank you all very much for listening, and I do hope to see you all again soon. Till then, have a good day.